Imagine a nation on the brink of collapse, where neighbors became enemies and a once united people found themselves at war with each other. The American Civil War of 1861 stands as one of the most pivotal and tragic chapters in U.S. history, a conflict that shaped the destiny of a nation and forever changed the lives of its citizens. The origins of this bloody conflict trace back decades before the first shots were fired. The United States in the mid-19th century was a nation divided by stark economic, social, and political differences. The northern states, rapidly industrializing and urbanizing, were moving away from the institution of slavery. In contrast, the southern states relied heavily on an agrarian economy that was deeply intertwined with slavery. This fundamental disagreement over slavery's role in America's future fueled growing tensions between the two regions. The election of Abraham Lincoln as president in November 1860 was a catalyst for secession. Lincoln, representing the newly formed Republican Party, stood firmly against the expansion of slavery into new territories. For the southern states, his victory was perceived as a direct threat to their way of life. In response, South Carolina became the first state to secede from the Union on December 20, 1860, followed swiftly by 6 other southern states. By February 1861, these seceded states formed the Confederate States of America, with Jefferson Davis elected as their president. The Confederate Constitution was drafted, closely mirroring the U.S. Constitution but with greater emphasis on states' rights and explicit protections for slavery. As the Confederacy solidified its position, the Union under Lincoln faced the daunting challenge of preserving the nation. The war's first major confrontation occurred on April 12, 1861, at Fort Sumter in Charleston, South Carolina. Confederate forces, demanding the surrender of the federal fort, opened fire after Union Major Robert Anderson refused to yield. The bombardment continued for 34 hours until Anderson, facing dwindling supplies and no reinforcements, surrendered. This attack marked the official start of the Civil War, igniting a conflict that would rage for 4 long and brutal years. The early years of the war were marked by significant battles and strategic maneuvers. The First Battle of Bull Run, also known as the Battle of Manassas, shattered any illusions of a swift conflict. Union forces, under the command of Brigadier General Irvin McDowell, clashed with Confederate troops led by Generals Joseph E. Johnston and P.G.T. Beauregard. The Confederate victory sent shockwaves through the North, demonstrating that the South was a formidable opponent. As the war progressed, both sides experienced victories and devastating losses. The Battle of Antietam in September 1862 became the single bloodiest day in American military history, with over 22,000 casualties. Despite the staggering losses, this Union strategic victory provided Lincoln with the momentum needed to issue the Emancipation Proclamation, transforming the war's moral and political stakes by making the abolition of slavery a central goal of the Union war effort. In 1863, the war reached a critical turning point with the Battle of Gettysburg. For 3 days, Union and Confederate forces clashed in the small town of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The Union's defensive positions, commanded by General George Meade, held firm against repeated assaults by General Robert E. Lee's Confederate Army. The Union's victory at Gettysburg, coupled with the fall of Vicksburg on July 4, 1863, marked a decisive shift in the war's momentum in favor of the North. The final years of the Civil War saw Union forces, under the command of General Ulysses S. Grant, implementing a strategy of total war. This approach aimed to break the Confederacy's will to fight by targeting not only its armies but also its economic and civilian resources. General William Tecumseh Sherman's infamous March to the Sea epitomized this strategy, as his troops cut a swath of destruction through Georgia, crippling Southern infrastructure and morale. The relentless pressure from Union forces and the depletion of Confederate resources led to the inevitable. On April 9, 1865, General Robert E. Lee surrendered to General Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox Courthouse, effectively bringing the Civil War to a close. The war had cost the lives of an estimated 620,000 soldiers, with countless others wounded and millions of families affected. The American Civil War was a watershed moment in U.S. history. It resolved the question of secession and brought an end to the institution of slavery, setting the stage for a long and arduous Reconstruction era. The sacrifices made and the lessons learned continue to resonate, reminding us of the profound costs of division and the enduring quest for unity and justice.